What's up, Fantasy Football Universe? This is SC Romero here to bring you another Devy Diamond. And today we're going to talk about the wide receiver that really took the nation by storm last year in Arizona's top prospect in wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan. But I also got a special guest here today, the creator of Dynasty Dogs himself, a member of the Toilet to Titles Dynasty Live, my man, Dynasty Dog Mike, right after this. Mike, my guy, what's going on, brother?
Hey, man, how's it going? How are you?
Doing good, man. I'm excited. We talked in the green room a little bit. Excited to have you on, though. We talk mostly about wrestling. That's our other our doppelganger is the wrestling fans in us. But excited to talk some football with you. I know you recently wrote up an article. I believe it was on Toilet Titles about Tetairoa McMillan as well.
Yep.
So thought about, hey, I got my Devy Diamond coming out about him. Love to get your thoughts on him. Just an overall great prospect. So let's before we get into it, tell us a little bit about yourself and what people can find you.
So you can find me on Twitter or X, for keep forgetting about that, at Dynasty Dog Mike. Rich and I started the Dynasty Dogs about a year ago. This coming week, I believe, will be 1 year since we started doing it. And I love doing it. Rich and I have been best friends since third grade. So yeah, it works well because he and I just pretty much just yell at each other and we can get away with it because we've known each other for so long. And then Toilet to Titles brought me on during the draft season, and that's been a fun ride. Me and Dylan and AJ have a great time doing that show together. It's been a couple weeks since we've done it. A lot of moving parts right now, but we're going to get back to it soon, and it'll be awesome.
Nice, man. Well, first, I definitely appreciate you coming on, and that's part of the community, man. Like, this is a hobby for a lot of us, right? And it's really just finding the time to get it done, but yet still trying to separate ourselves and enjoy times with family as well. So I'm excited to see when y'all come back on, and bringing it in. We're getting to that season where the football content is coming out. This is me and the guys at FFU joke that, now we're getting the redrafts in, which is the majority of the fantasy football world, right? So we have our DJs like you and I, and then Rich, and then all the guys at FFU that talk it all year round. But now it's the people coming in, and we're like, we've been talking about this guy for the past X amount of months, right? So without that, though, let's get into, one guy that I believe we're both pretty high on that we love in Tetairoa McMillan, Arizona wide receiver, just all-around great prospect, has the length, has the athleticism, was a four-star prospect out of Servite High School in Anaheim, California, originally committed to Oregon. So when I first saw that, I was super stoked. I was like, man, this guy's going to be a stud. But then he actually decommitted and then actually announced his commitment to Arizona. So
did that hurt you a little bit with the Oregon?
A little bit, especially because it was Pac-12. No longer the Pac-12, so it makes sense now. But because it was Pac-12, I was like, man, you could have went to Texas. You could have went to anywhere else. You have to go to Pac-12. But they got a stud. And at the end of the day, we just want the best for these athletes, And his freshman season was good. He had 81 targets, 31 receptions, averaged 18 yards per catch, and had 702 yards. So it was a fantastic freshman season. But I believe he got on the radar for the majority this past season. This was his blow-up season. He increased his catch rate by 90%, had caught 90 targets, 90 receptions of 134 targets, 1,402 yards, plus 10 touchdowns. Just an all-around fantastic effort. And we really saw that in this 2023 season. I will say for the 2024 season upcoming, it's going to be interesting seeing, because I think a lot of people didn't understand the value that Jacob Cowing had in that offense with him, that Jacob Cowing took a lot of the pressure off going underneath, and, Chet became that kind of stretch guy. But before we get into his 2024 outlook season, what are your thoughts on some of the things you've seen from him in the previous seasons?
So the first thing that automatically stands out, as you mentioned, it the large frame. I think he's listed at 6'5", 210 pounds. You could see that jumps right off the page, obviously. Sure. But one of the most impressive things about him for me is his movement skills. A guy that big shouldn't be able to do whip routes the way he does, because the fact that you really have to be able to sink your hips, and a guy that size usually are not that good at it, that impressed me majorly. That jumped out to me right away.
For sure. And I think it helps with, like you mentioned, that length, his athleticism, but just his wingspan alone. I mean, I don't have the wingspan in front of me, but I would imagine it's at least 7 feet. I mean, just how long he is, you know. So being able to do that definitely becomes a reliable target for a quarterback. And I think that's why he benefits so well, because majority of people didn't even know who the quarterback was for him, you know. But it was
I still don't even remember. I forget already.
You know, Fafita, you know, it's like it jumped off, but he's someone that continues to excel and he continues to get better, and we're seeing it. And I don't know, the sophomore season may be the breakout. I think he still gets 1,000 yards. I don't know if he gets over the 1,402. He might get, you know, 1,100, 1,200 this season, but I think it's more so just defenses now say, okay, he's here. He knows what it is. And he still has that great athleticism, the physical attributes, wins the contested catches, you know, and there's a lot of areas that he can improve in his game, but the athleticism he brings to the table makes him a top threat. And right now in your Devy drafts or even C2C drafts, he's one of the top guys off the board. You know, he's a top 5 pick.
Absolutely. And if he wasn't already gone.
Right. Yeah. He's I see some take him as the one. You know, I personally take Luther Burden. I see him, Jeremiah Smith, and Tet, you know, going in as the 1, 2, 3 in any order. You know, and I'm not mad at any. I know.
Yeah, it's Burden for me too, by the way.
Yeah, I think he's just the overall one right now. Tet, man, I like him. You know, the size is great, and I hope he continues to shine. We just also seeing that these larger guys aren't panning out so great in the NFL as of late, but I hope he continues to sign, you know, and I think he definitely will dominate again this year. Plus, you know, they lost their receiving options in Chandler McLaughlin, and they lost Jacob Cowing. So it's really about him and what he can do as far as becoming that leader as an offensive weapon for him. Also, Michael Wiley, you know, the running back who was actually utilized.
Yeah, he jumped out to me a little bit too.
Under the radar guy, I actually have him as I believe he went undrafted, if I'm not mistaken. I was as undrafted gem as well, because he's in Washington, and he's in a sense a replica to Austin Ekeler for me. I think he could be utilized as that. So let him learn from Austin Ekeler, then watch out for him. But that's a topic for another day when we talk about Michael Wiley there. But no, with Chet, I mean, we've already talked about some of these strengths here, but his catch radius, you know, just extraordinary wingspan. If a quarterback can't throw, just throw in his direction. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
That's the recipe right there. Just throw in his direction. He's going to win your contested catch. He's going to catch it if it's 5 yards away from him. This guy is Mr. Fantastic with the ball. You know,
yes. So I kind of see him as I don't know if you watch basketball a lot. He kind of reminds me of like a Tim Duncan with his rebounding ability. He kind of like boxes out defenders, goes up and attacks the ball. He reminds me of that kind of like a Tim Duncan power forward type player when going up for the ball. So it impresses me a lot as well.
Well, I mean, that's a great comparison. You talk about longevity and durability. I mean, Duncan's one of the best out there, right? And I hate saying that because I'm a Rockets fan, but, you know, Duncan arguably top 3 power forward of all time, you know, or center, whatever you want to say for him. But
I think he's the best all time to me, power forward.
And there you go. And he has area of the game, which if you think of Tet like that, then you definitely want to take that shot on him, because maybe not in his conference. I forgot. I think Arizona's going to the Big 12, if I'm not mistaken. So you have the conference of physicality, but if you have that Tim Duncan-esque, then you have some great opportunity there, you know, what he could do against the tougher defensive backs or the bigger safeties that he may have to face, you know, in this upcoming season. Athleticism, I've said that word a couple times already, and you mentioned it with his hip movement. For his size, he should not be moving the way he does. And not just, you see a lot of these taller guys where it's stiff movement. And when I say route runs, I mean like they do like very crisp route running, like you see the angle in which they turn. He is very fluid with it. He is quick. He knows how to make the cuts with precision. I really love that about his athleticism. What route running, I think, goes hand in hand with that, you know, and just an overall good football IQ. He's just a top prospect that understands where he needs to be and what he needs to do at that next level as far as taking the top off the defenses. What are some strengths that really jump off the screen to you when you watch him?
I'm glad you mentioned the high IQ thing, because that is something that also jumped out to me. And then we just talked about Tim Duncan, Mr. Fundamental guy who's always doing the right things.
Right.
I noticed a lot with Tet, sitting down in the open field in the zone, dragging his feet along the boundary. He's just happens to know where he is on the field at all times, and that's something major, and that's something I really look for, because it shows you know what to do when maybe the play breaks down, or how to make yourself available to the quarterback, stuff like that.
Right. No, that's something that you don't see a lot in younger wide receivers, but you kind of saw that just in as soon as he jumped into the college scene. You saw it in high school, say, too, if you went back that far, but you definitely see it as soon as he jumps in, and the IQ goes in with the work ethic. Like we saw it year over year. He wants to be better. Like I don't see him as a guy that's content with where he's at. Like I said, he gets below that 1402, but I know he wants more than that, and he's going to try to get more than that. And
that's a high benchmark, 1402.
Oh hit. Yeah, it's not an everyday thing. And again, I think him losing Jacob Cowing, there'll be who steps up to take on that wide receiver 2 role. But that's a big part of why he was so successful. They defenses had to make their schemes fit to cover Cowing underneath. But if they didn't, or if they did, McMillan was there in the deep to catch it as well. But unfortunately, every player, doesn't matter who they are, also have areas of improvement. What are some areas of improvement that you saw in the film that you want to see him get better in going into this next season?
So it kind of feels like nitpicking a little bit, to be honest with you. Some things that I noticed that kind of annoyed me a little bit, but again, we're talking fantasy for the most part. Blocking for me was something that really, I don't think he knows how to use his full body when it comes to that. I feel like he is either out of position or doesn't know how to use that full strength to keep defenders away from the ball carrier, to whatever. I just feel like he just doesn't know how to do that just yet. And I think that's something that could be easily improved upon. The other biggest thing that I have that, again, he's still so young, that could come to him is his defensive manipulation. I think his route running is good, but at times I do notice corners being in his hip pocket. So I think he needs to be a little bit more manipulative, with head fakes, shoulder fakes, stuff like that. I think that's something that could come, because he's got the minor stuff down. We're not. It's hard to say minor stuff when it's something I could never do in my life. But,
for sure.
He's got that stuff down pat. He just needs to work on it a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. And blocking becomes big, because not as much as you see it for a running back or tight end, maybe. But let's say he goes to, let's just throw
San Francisco is big with blocking.
Let's see San Francisco. Perfect. Where it's like, if he doesn't showcase that, does that take time off of the field? And granted, that's a crowded wide receiver room, but still, if he comes in and enhances on his blocking skills, it gives him more reason to be on there, to block for a CMC. The Ravens maybe, or the Pittsburgh, the teams that run heavy, those are teams that want those wide receivers that can get out and open, but also, hey, we're going to run the ball 20 plus times a game. We need you to be able to block too, right? And that's something that becomes big. You mentioned the route timing. I actually have that here as well, where sometimes it's slightly off, and I think that just comes with understanding more. And as you said, I think he's getting better with it, and a great overall prospect. But his consistency, at times he's going crazy. He's throwing 140 plus games, 100 yards games, and touchdown or two. But at times he doesn't do anything, and it's hard in certain situations to look at that for a wide receiver, because sometimes you question, is that the quarterback? Because a lot of times you see him open too, so you can't really say that. But at the same time, like you said, nitpicking, it's like, what could you have done better so the quarterback did see you? Like could you have cut a second earlier? Could you have made an adjustment to go the other way, or whatever it may be, to have that? So that consistency kind of falls into it. And really his physicality. I know you mentioned, he goes after it as well, but I think his length has a lot to do with that. It's not really as much as physical. So his size and his wingspan can allow him to get the contested catches, because he can outreach your defenders. But at the same time, if a physical defensive back, you talk about maybe a Jabbar Muhammad, maybe a Malachi Starks out in Georgia, those
Shador Sanders,
Shador,
too.
Sheilo, or Travis Hunter and Sheilo Sanders, yeah. So those are two.
I keep it forgetting.
No, you're good. Shador is great prospect as well. But those guys that are a little bit more in your face can get the best of him, and not necessarily that they're not getting an interception or anything, but they're disrupting him and his movement to not allow him to get the pass. And that just becomes with him being a little bit more physical and bulking up a little bit. It's kind of like a Kevin Durant, if you will bring a basketball.
I was going to say he is a thin 6'5", but again, we're talking what, a 20-year-old at this point. So
right,
when we hit that 25-year-old mark, we start putting on the weight a little bit.
For sure. He starts getting the dad bod and everything, and it's like, exactly. Okay, there you go. But I mean that's something that also going in, some of these smaller guys, Troy Franklin this past year, going into NFL weight room though, is going to be different than the college weight room. Your trainers are going to be different as far as teaching you what to eat, how to bulk up.
Nutritionists, yep.
Right. So that's all going to play into factors as well. So as much as that's an area of improvement right now, it's kind of one of those where it's going to get better. Like you just know it's going to come with his game. So you can't say there's nothing wrong about it. You have to find something like, all right, there's something that you're not doing the best in the nation as you consider him, now, as far as draft stock, he's eligible next year. I have him as first round draft pick. I think consensus does. You have him as first round draft pick?
Yeah, first round pick. Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's a given. I think in mocks I've seen him go as the first wide receiver, and we already talked about this. Him and Burden, Emeka Ibuka, I think is another one that's considered first round there. Evan Stewart too, if he ends up coming out. I know you said you would take Luther Burden in your fantasy drafts. Do you think in an NFL draft McMillan goes ahead of Burden?
No, that's tough because I could see them as being like a 1A, 1B, like kind of like the 2 years ago draft where Addison and like Flowers went like kind of back to back kind of thing. Like I don't see them going far apart in the NFL draft. I just think I almost said somebody else, but Luther Burden brings a different dimension than Ted does. We just talked about physicality. Burden has that in spades, but we're talking about Ted here. So for Ted, I could see him being a mid first round pick to a team that needs a big body X wide receiver. And there's plenty of those.
For sure. And so actually, I mean, you can catch my write-up on the Devy Diamonds on the fantasyfootballuniverse.com, but I actually have an ideal landing spot as the Los Angeles Rams. I mean,
that's actually a really good one. I like that a lot.
And I think people don't say it because they're like, oh, they have Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua.
Neither
Cooper's
one of them
closer, but Cooper's closer to the end of his career than he is his prime. I mean, he may not be. He's 31, 32, I think, maybe in this season, but as a wide receiver, that's starting to go down the dip, right? And with Puka and the emergence of him, I mean, having him opposite, I think, would just do so well for that. That offense loves to feed their wide receivers. Puka could again play that underneath that slot kind of guy. We have McMillan be the X and be against some of those faster, quicker wide receivers and be the guy for Stafford. Or really, again, we talk about Stafford also closer to the end of his career than he is his prime, but yet bringing the quarterback, hey, even if it's a quarterback that's trash, they have Stetson Bennett there. Just throw the ball up. McMillan will get it. He's that good that he can just go after the ball.
Yeah, that's actually a sneaky spot there. I like that because they are going to need a second wide receiver at some point, just like you mentioned. Cooper is getting up there in age, and he's a different dimension wide receiver than what they have. I mean, Cooper and Puka can both play the X, but they're not. It's not their specialty. They don't have that big body like like Ted does.
For sure.
So I think that's a great one. I'm trying to think of another one, maybe like Washington, because Terry's getting a little bit older as well.
Yeah.
We think Terry's only been in the league for 3 years, but in reality, he's like almost 30. So
yeah, for sure. That would be nice too. And I think for him, being in like a Washington type of system with a younger quarterback in Jaden, that will actually benefit him more. And Jaden saw success with a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. that throw it down the field, he's going to get the ball, right? So that would be great there as well. And I feel a lot of people may see a wide receiver room and they see the talent that's there, but they don't take in consideration the age. And that's why you said, Washington. That's why I said Los Angeles, because teams, it's like recruiting in college. You're consistently building. It's about this year, but you also have to think about the year after, right? So if something were to happen in the cup and he's like, all right, I'm just call it out, or something else. Who's taking that next step up? And we saw Puka do it when Cup went down, but he does need some help, right? But who's taking the next step up for a Washington team? Who's going to build and elevate on them as well? So, I mean, I love both those spots that can be potential for him, and reality is any offense he could be a part of, I think he can make an impact going in right away. And that really leads us into, our final segment here is just his fantasy impact. With this next draft class, I think he's a top. I'm trying to think of top. He's a top 5 pick. Granted, if you're in super flex leagues, you might be favoritism of quarterbacks and going there. But I think Luther Burden, Tet, Quinshon Judkins are locked in top 5, regardless of what you want. They should be at least, unless they stay or anything like that. So, as a fantasy impact, I think out the gate he can be a 1. Like I don't think he's not going to be drafted to not start day 1. I think he could be a wide receiver 1. I haven't done my full rankings yet, like as far as the next up Devy prospects and NFL combined. But I probably have Tet as at least a top 20 wide receiver going into NFL next year.
I can see that.
Again, landing spot, all that kind of stuff matters in a sense too. But I just think his impact is already there. You already see the energy he brings, what he could bring as far as his length, as far as stretching the field, as far as being a nice route runner as well. What do you see him as a fantasy impact?
So I'm glad that you mentioned the top 20 because that's in my mind. I had him around like that 22 to 24 range, believe it or not. Yeah. I see him like a very, very, I would say maybe even a little bit more athletic Michael Pittman. And I love Michael Pittman, one of the most consistent fantasy wide receivers, for the past 3 years that we've had. I could see him for sure being a very similar comp and style and player that Michael Pittman is in fantasy. And that would be great for our fantasy or dynasty rosters. So I could see a top 5, top 3 dynasty rookie pick for sure. Just depends on really what happens with the quarterbacks. You have Beck, you have Dart, possibly. Who knows? Like somebody's going to rise out of nowhere. Like, JJ McCarthy wasn't really considered a top, 15 pick in the NFL draft going into last year. And now all of a sudden he was the 11th pick in the draft. So it's going to happen. Especially with the way the league needs quarterbacks. But again, I think it's pretty safe to say he's in the top 3 to 5 in rookie picks.
For sure. I'm glad you brought up Michael Pittman because I've seen a lot of comps to Mike Evans. I think that's more on the size, but Mike Evans is way bigger.
Yeah, that dude's bulky.
As far as size, I think he's like 245 or something, if I'm not mistaken. He's like 6'5" which is great. But I say that because maybe I need to go back and watch Mike Evans' rookie tape. But Tet McMillan is definitely quicker. And this could be age difference too, because Mike Evans is getting up there too, and Ted's still young, but he's quicker, he's more fluid, he's more athletic, it seems. Mike Evans is just a dog. Like he's just, I mean, let's speak about dynasty dogs. He's just a dynasty dog, right? He's just he really goes and gets it, and not that I'm saying Ted is not a dog, but he's not as physical.
He doesn't know how to use that body. Yeah, he doesn't know how to use his body like Mike Evans does. And I think Michael Pittman still does a very good job at it. But, Pittman's probably 220, 6'4". So I think the builds are very close. And I think, even if we see Michael Pittman, if he never hits Mike Evans, but he hits Michael Pittman, I think we'd all be super excited about that. And in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think he's definitely the next up. I think he's closer to a Pittman Evans type of season than a Quinshon Johnston type of season, and I hope people don't shy away from that as far as dealing with it and understanding what these tall, lengthy wide receivers can do. I know the NFL has kind of transitioned to your smaller frame, speedy guys, but Tet McMillan is still speedy. And again, you still have room for these guys to go out there and make the plays, these bigger guys to go out there and make it. And he's going to be the next up when it comes to it as well.
Yeah, I think they also used Quinshon Johnston like in a completely different way in college than they did with Tet. Like a lot of drag routes for Quinshon Johnston, try to get the ball in his hands, get him open. I don't think his route running is as close to Tet is. And I do feel like while we've been saying his physicality is not great, I do think he knows how to box out corners better than Quentin Johnson ever did. So
right.
I wouldn't be concerned with the size. Like, you were just saying the size issues in the NFL recently with the wide receiver position. But I think he's a bit different than a Quentin Johnston. So don't fret about that just yet.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, you compare the tapes. I definitely like what I see from Tet more than I like from Quentin Johnston. A lot of that Quentin Johnston was just the system he was in TCU, where Arizona has an okay system as well. But again, we talked about earlier, if you ask people who the quarterback was, they probably didn't know. At least with Johnston, you knew it was Duggan, Max Duggan. So I think that plays in the factor of showing. Look, Tech McMillan in a sense is one of those wide receivers that he can make a bad quarterback look good. You have quarterbacks that can make wide receivers look great, and then they go somewhere it's not happening. But vice versa, you have wide receivers that can make a quarterback. Garrett Wilson, he made every quarterback he played with. Pittman, he's made bad quarterbacks look good. Minshew has stock because of Pittman, right? And
Carson Wentz.
Right. That all these guys, I think McMillan's going to fall into that role of he's going to be effective day one. He's going to be a starter day one. Draft capital, he's going to be a top 20 pick. I don't think he's falling below top 20 because he's going to be one of the first wide receivers off the board. This next class will be more defensive heavy. And as you mentioned, their quarterbacks will go. You have Ewers, Shador, maybe even Beck, but McMillan will definitely be a top wide receiver off the board there as well. Man, Mike, I appreciate you coming on, talking to me about Tech McMillan. Is there any last words you want to say about Tech McMillan specifically?
Get ready for hopefully another big breakout season for him. I think he could, like we've been saying this whole time, we keep saying he's really good now, but I feel like he could just continue to get better. And that's the scary thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's a finished product. And I think we say top 20 now, he could be top 10 by the end of next season. Who knows?
Yeah, 100%. No, I 100% agree. He's definitely someone to have on your radar. As we said earlier, he's going in top 5 picks in Devy drafts, C2C drafts, whatever you name it. So get him while you can because his value is only going up right now. But no, I appreciate you coming on. Before we go, let the people of the Fantasy Football Universe know where they can find you.
You can find me at X Dynasty Dog Mike. You could find the Dynasty Dogs on all your major streaming platforms of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, stuff like that. And T2T Live will be back shortly, hopefully this week. We do that live on YouTube and Twitter and stuff like that, so you'll see me there as well. And I'm always posting like I have nothing better to do with my life, even though I do. So you can, I'll be all over Twitter at all times. So I really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, bro. And I appreciate you having me on, coming on and joining me as well. Again, I am SC Romero. You can find me at the PPR. So follow my other guys at the Fantasy Football Universe. My man Jesse at JMiller05. My man Aaron St. Dennis at the Fantasy or FF Mad Scientist. My man Jeremy Solman FF_Rebel. And then also to stay up to date on Devy Diamonds and all the fantasy football content we have at the FFU, follow at the FF Universe on X. If you like these videos, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know your thoughts on Tech McMillan. And for Mike, I do want to say, SC and Mike, we do believe in Joe Hendry.
I was gonna say believe in Ted McMillan, but I was like,
oh, there you go.
I forgot. But yeah, we do believe in Joe Hendry. That song is the top played song on my Spotify, which is depressing, but still.
Not bad. Hey, when you believe, you believe. And we believe in Tet. This is a Tet Devy Diamonds. So we believe in Tet too. So Tet and Joe Hendry, we believe in both of them. But until next time, for Mike, for me, SC Romero, and the FF Universe, we'll catch y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.